Welcome back everyone to the third video of the Leonardo's Reef Showtank YouTube series. Today something very exciting. We're going to talk about the flow and the lighting in the new Acropora Reef tank, so stay tuned. So today we start with flow, and after that I will cover the lighting. And I think it's important to first distinguish different types of flow that you have in a reef tank, and then I can explain a little bit more how we did it in our tank. So first of all, you have the gyre motion, and a gyre is basically a big circular motion in a tank that you can achieve with one or two pumps blowing constantly one direction and moving all the water in the tank in a circular way. This flow is very effective to get detritus from the bottom or in between the rocks into the overflow. And you just need one or two pumps to achieve that, because once you set the water in motion, it basically keeps moving. So you don't need a lot of different pumps to create that gyre. The biggest downside of it is that the flow is very constant. So if you have big colonies or corals in there, they will always be hit from the same side, which can create a lack of flow in certain parts of the colony, but also weird colony shape if the coral adjusts to that certain type of flow. So that's why we also need different types of flow to address that. All right, the second type of flow is random or chaotic flow. And I think this is one of the most important types of flow in an Acropora reef tank, because with a random chaotic flow, like the name already suggests, the flow comes from all different directions, is very low at some times, but also very high intensity at some times. And in this way, the coral is hit constantly from different sides and flow reaches every part of the colony. And waste products from the corals are taken away from the colony as quick as possible, which makes the overall colony much more healthy. And also detritus cannot accumulate in one part or the other, but is washed away at all times. And together with that gyre flow, you still have that motion towards the overflow, so all the detritus is in the end exported out. To create a random or chaotic flow, you definitely need more than one pump, because with one pump you can never create different flow patterns all the time. You basically need several pumps that blow into each other or combat each other and break each other apart, and thus creating turbulence, random flow patterns. So these pumps are constantly hitting into each other, canceling each other out. So you definitely need a higher volume of flow if you want to create a random flow pattern. So always choose your pumps a little bit bigger if you go for this, because you definitely need that capacity to create this random flow pattern. So the third one is the standing wave. And a standing wave is maybe the hardest to create in a tank, especially when you already have a gyre flow and a chaotic flow in your tank. The way you can create a standing wave is adjust certain pumps to the specific wavelength or specific frequency of the tank. And that may sound a little bit weird, but every tank has a certain length. And if you switch the pumps to a pulse mode and you adjust that pulse mode so it matches the length of the tank, you will see that there's a wave forming inside your tank. And why is this wave important? Well, even with a gyre and with chaotic flow, you can still not reach every part of your tank. So there will be always dead areas or stagnant areas, especially inside Acropora colonies. And this standing wave basically isn't flow, but it's just a whole water column moving up and down. And by doing so, you move all the water, even the water inside of a colony. The water inside of a colony will also move up and down together with the whole water column. And together with the chaotic flow and with the gyre, you move it up and down, but because it moves up and down, you also wash it away. It's not easy to create all these three types of flow in a tank, but I think we achieved it. And we initially tried to achieve it with the Jebao SOW20 pumps. You may remember that there were 4 pumps here in the left middle and 6 pumps here on the right. And we really tried to create the flow that way, and it just wasn't possible. But fortunately, these new Vortech clone types of pumps came out very quickly after we started up this tank. And this model is the DP65, so the biggest model that's available right now. And because of these pumps, we were really able to create the type of flow that we were looking for. And currently we have 2 here at the left side. These 2 have a pulse mode, so they make a little bit of a standing wave. You can also see that from time to time, not constantly, but from time to time they make a standing wave. We have 4 in the back, and those pumps in the back are on a random pattern. So they are pulsing, they're waving, they're really randomized. And they're also not linked together. So they all do random things individually from each other. And they basically blow from the back to the front, and they create some sort of flow over the top, through the bottom and back. So they basically wash all the detritus from under these rocks into the water column. So there's no place where detritus is lying around. Then finally the gyre, hidden in the back, behind the overflow, are still 3 SOW pumps. And those 3 SOW pumps are at a constant mode. So they are just blowing at a constant high rate, creating that gyre flow from back, all the way back against the back wall to the front. And then these pumps take over and blow the water all the way to the overflow, into the filter. So by placing the pumps right back and left front, you create this gyre motion. Together with the 4 pumps at the back, you randomize it, and by having 2 pumps at a pulsing mode, you also create some standing wave. So that's how we achieved it. It's a lot of flow for sure. I think it's about 150 times turnover, so it's definitely overkill, I think. But as soon as the frags are in, we can adjust the flow maybe a little bit lower to see what the needs are. So for sure at a later stage, you need that capacity to get that flow into the colonies and keep them healthy. So maybe in the beginning we can dial them back a little bit, but for sure when the colonies get bigger, we need all this flow. So there were a lot of people that were very interested in these new Jebao pumps, and I promised some of you to tell a little bit more about them. We have been using them for I think 3-4 weeks right now, and so far they're doing really well. A lot of people ask them how warm do they get? I think they get like 35 degrees roughly. Not very warm at all. There are no slots in here for ventilation, so they are totally waterproof, I think, which I think is a big plus, but they don't get hot and they are running at 100% for sure. Second of all, I think a big advantage compared to their predecessors, so to say, is that they contain little suction pads on the inside and the outside. And this makes them very hard to fall off. I'm not able to take them off without a lot of force. So if you accidentally bump into them, it's really no problem. And another advantage is if you want to clean the insides, you can basically switch off the pump, take out the inside, clean it, and then place it back at exactly the same spot as it was before. And you don't have to be scared this part will fall off. So before I forget, there's one thing I still want to mention about cleaning the pumps. We have around 70 Jebao pumps here in the farm running constantly, both flow pumps as return pumps. And we never have issues with bursting magnets or failing pumps or any issues at all. And I think our secret is not to clean them too well. So we try to never clean the motor part of the pumps. Of course not this one because this is outside of the tank, but all the gyre pumps, we never clean the part which contains the motor. We sometimes brush it off a little bit. We never take it out, put it in citric acid or vinegar at all. Same goes for the magnets. We may brush them off a bit under tap water, but we never decalcify them because I think it really weakens the plastic and makes the chances of them started leaking or bursting much higher. So the only thing that we clean are the grills of the pump, only just with a brush, never in vinegar or citric acid, to be honest. So we keep that very clean to maximize flow. But the motor parts we actually never clean. And I think that's really the secret for longevity of these type of pumps, because you just don't impact the plastic of those pumps too much with all the citric acid or the vinegar. So this is at least what I noticed. I'm not saying you shouldn't clean your pumps at all, but maybe just try to keep the motor part in the tank and just clean the other parts. But yeah, be careful because you don't want to have any magnets leaking in your tank. So I think there are 3 very important factors for any Acropora reef tank, and that's lighting, flow, and the water parameters. And Adam from Fragarage from the podcast once asked me, what is the most important one? And I think that's a very hard one to answer, but I think flow is the most important because a lack of flow can be deadly short term. And I think a lack of light or suboptimal water parameters are also not beneficial, but not so deadly short term. So I think flow should be something you really put a lot of attention to. So at a close second to third place are lighting and water parameters. So talking about that top 3, I think the second most important one is lighting. And I want to finally explain you something more about our setup and why we made this decision, because I don't think it's so straightforward nowadays. But I will start with the LEDs, and the LEDs I chose to use are the G6 Radion Blues. And you see both XR30s as XR15s. And why did I choose the Radions? Well, the spread of these lights are phenomenal, and they are pretty small, so their form factor is pretty small, but their light spread is great. The light spread is basically uniform, so the par numbers right now are super constant, both front to back, in the middle. It's pretty constant, and also because we use the diffusers on this light, it's a very uniform way of lighting. Because we use these Radions as our secondary source of light, we chose the Radion Blues. We really believe in a full spectrum for corals right here. All of our farm tanks are basically very white lighting, full spectrum lighting. But because we use these as secondary lighting, we chose the Radion Blues because we need that extra blue peak to combat the very yellow halides that we use in this system. So we needed as much blue light as possible, and I think LEDs, especially the Radion Blues, are very, very capable of giving that very blue, high intensity blue lighting. So we are really happy with them. They are running at 100% right now, and they're running at 100% for about 6 hours a day. And at sunset and in the evening, they dim down a little bit, and the white channels are even more taken out. So yeah, we are pretty happy with them, running at 100%. They're giving a very nice uniform type of lighting, almost like T5, I think. And yeah, they form a perfect addition to these bad boys, which are the halides. The main source of lighting at this tank is metal halide in the form of 400 watt metal halides from Ushio, the 14,000 Kelvin bulbs. And maybe some of you are not so familiar with metal halide, so I will explain a little bit more what it is, what the benefits are, what the downsides are, etc. So what is a metal halide? Well, a metal halide is a glass bulb. It's a very old school lamp that is currently not in production anymore because the inner center here contains a lot of heavy metals. and is of course not very eco-friendly. How does the lamp work? Well, in this small bulb in the middle, there are salts and gases that emit light, but they only emit light when you put a very high current through them. And that very high current is created by a big ballast that you connect to these lamps. And that ballast creates a very high voltage current that goes through this small bulb and creates a plasma arc. And that plasma arc can reach temperatures up to 3000 degrees Celsius. So it gets really, really hot. And that hot plasma emits light. It emits a lot of UV, a lot of visible light, and a lot of infrared light. Of course, UV light can be very harmful for us, for our eyes, but also for everything in the tank, for everything that's alive. So most of this UV light is filtered out by the outer shell of this bulb. So this outer shell is also made of glass, which basically filters out most of the UV, especially the UVB and UVC, which is the most harmful. And it only lets through a little bit, tiny part of the UVA, which we will also see in our spectral graphs, because I will show you the actual spectrum of these bulbs with our spectrometer, so we can have a look together. So what are the benefits and downside of metal halide? Well, I will start with the downsides. First of all, these are not made anymore. So we still have some in stock, but there will be an end to it because they are just not produced anymore. Some are produced in China, but those are quite low quality. The spectrum shifts a lot, and they're not so reliable as these German-made ones. So yeah, that's the first downside. The second downside, of course, is the heat. They produce a lot of infrared light, and infrared, of course, as you may know, turns into heat when it hits a certain surface. So every surface in the tank, the water itself as well, gets heated up by this infrared. And that can be quite substantial. So if you have a tank at home and you light it with these metal halides, you definitely need a chiller, otherwise your tank will definitely overheat, especially in summer. So third, the efficiency. These lights tend to be less efficient than LED lights because a certain part of the energy is turned into infrared light, which is not visible light, not usable light for corals. It's a wavelength that's basically useless, and yeah, it still consumes a lot of electricity. So these LEDs are definitely more efficient in creating the right light for corals, and only the right light for corals, and these metal halides just create the whole pattern and the whole, you know, wave, the whole spectrum, and also the wavelengths we cannot use, like UVB and C, but especially a lot of infrared light. So then the pros, because there are certainly pros to this type of light, and I will start again with the spectral characteristics. And the spectrum of these lights are basically full spectrum, but full spectrum in a sense that really puts these LEDs you know, into shame, because this spectrum really goes, like I explained, from UVC to all the way to infrared and everything in between, like we will see later. And the light just looks very natural because, as you may know, sunlight is also full spectrum, and all the colors in this tank will be shown in a very natural and realistic way. And as you may remember from the previous videos, the thing we try to recreate is yeah, as much as possible natural looking tank. And I think a very important aspect of a natural looking tank is natural looking lighting. And I think there's nothing as natural looking as these metal halides. It's very hard to achieve it in any other way than these. So that's immediately the second thing. It's a very natural looking type of light, which I think is great, especially for what we are doing here. The third benefit is tremendous spread. I think the light spread is very, very good. And you may think metal halide is a spotlight, but it is a spotlight and it's also not a spotlight, and I will explain. When you compare this light to an LED light, then an LED light only shines the light down. So you have 180 degrees and the light goes this way. That's an LED. The thing with a metal halide is that the light is emitted at 360 degrees. So some of the light goes down and 50% of the light goes actually up. And that light, of course, is not wasted, but that light is caught by the reflector. And a reflector depends on which type you use, but most reflectors, especially these parabolic reflectors, can spread the light in a way that's very uniform. And these reflectors are 50 by 50 centimeters. And this reflector basically creates an even intensity field, which is 50 by 50 centimeters big. So you basically have a panel of light that's 50 by 50 centimeters wide and has a very uniform light spread. So you may think this is a spotlight, but it's definitely not because of this reflector. And only 50% of the light is radiated from a single point, but 50% of the light is actually radiated from the reflector and distributed in a very equal way. So I think I talked enough. I think it's time to fire them up, because you literally fire them up. And I think the best way to show it is through a time lapse. You will see the gases basically need 5 to 10 minutes to heat up. So the initial time to reach the final spectrum is roughly 10 minutes. So it's a pretty spectacular event every day when you see the bulbs switch on, which I will do now. So if this doesn't look like a natural reef, I don't know. I think colors are very natural. The coralline algae is pink, like it should be. There's also red coralline algae, and the fish look very realistic. And I cannot wait to add some corals to see what they will look under this light. Ever since I thought about creating this tank, which is already I think 15 years ago, these metal halides weren't so weird. But I think nowadays, of course, they are not a very logical choice, but I'm still very happy that I did it. Also because I can just experiment with frags from our other farm systems and see how they will respond to this type of lighting, which is just very interesting to do. And yeah, I cannot wait to see how several frags that look great under LED and T5s, how they will look under this light. So let's do some par measurements, and the par meter that we use is the Dano Plus par meter, which may not sound very familiar to you, but this is very cheap, or much cheaper par meter than the Apogee that you may know. And we also had the Apogee par meter, but that one fell into the water, and it's not waterproof. I can guarantee that. But we were lucky to use both side to side and do some par measurements and compare the two. And the measurements are very consistent for both of them. These measurements are 10% less than the Apogee. So if you add 10% to the measurements, you will have the same results as the Apogee over the whole bandwidth. So yeah, let's do some par measurements and add 10%, and yeah, let's see where I can put Acropora. I'm very curious. All right, so let's start at, I think, the lowest point, which is a par of between 170 and 185, 86. Because of the shimmer, you will have some variation in the par. Yeah, so this is definitely a low light spot, which is maybe great for Montipora and Acropora, but probably not for your most demanding Acropora species. Definitely not the ones from Australia. Then we go left middle. Then we're already up to 325, 340, and then add 10%, right? So around 350 over here. Same here. Then we go a little bit more to the middle. Then we're already at 460, 470, and you can add 10% to that as well. So we're above 500 already. Over here, 520, 560. See, the shimmer can really make a difference in some cases. Definitely varies 10% because of those shimmering. Over here, 480. Then right under the radium blue, where it overlaps the two metal halides, we are, sometimes we jump to 630, which is basically, if you add 10%, is the high 6, so almost 700 there. Then to the front here, we are at 430. Well, let's see, all the way here in the back. Yeah, we're still at like 290, 280, 320, plus 10%, right? 340. So definitely enough to keep acros there. In my experience, everything 250 plus is good for Acropora. Not all types are doing well with those low numbers, around 250, 300, but there are definitely species that do very well with those low numbers. Then another plateau here. Yeah, it's close to 700 again. So I think we can conclude that this is enough par enough par for corals at almost every spot in the tank. So I might have a few locations that are better for Montes or Acropora. I don't think I want to add Montipora, but maybe Acropora. I have a few very nice species that I can add to those locations, and the rest will be perfect for acros. So then the spectrum, which is also very interesting, I think. There are a lot of spectrometers on the market for hobbyists, which are, to be honest, they are not so accurate, and they're nice, you know, for the hobby, but I think if you really want to know the exact spectrum, you need a professional grade one. And this one is not waterproof, unfortunately, so we cannot use it underwater. And I use it in this Ziploc bag, so if it drops in the water, I at least have a few seconds to take it out. Because if this falls in, yeah, I'm not happy. So I will show the spectrum on screen, because I can export it. And yeah, let's take some measurements. We start with the measurement of the metal halides only, which can be taken by just putting it under the metal halides directly, like this. Yeah, and then you can see the spectrum is basically complete. So it goes all the way from 350 nanometers to 800 nanometers. And the whole spectrum is covered. You can definitely see a peak around 430 nanometers, which is a very blue, near UV-ish wavelength. Of course, it's totally balanced by all the spectrum above that. So all the yellows, the greens, the reds are all present. So it makes the light a very natural appearance. And let's see the radions at 100%, all channels 100%, which I can achieve by holding it a little bit below the radion, so all the different LEDs can blend like this. Yeah, and then you see a very high 450 peak, so it actually complements the metal halides really well by having a different peak than the halides. But you can also see the limitations of LEDs. The spectrum is not so full, and not so full spectrum as as the halides are. But that also makes them much more efficient. So it's not only bad. But I think the two really complement each other very well. So let's take a measurement now where they are blended both together and see what the overall outcome is. So then I will keep it roughly at half. Of course, I cannot put it underwater. I can keep it a little bit in between, like this. Yeah, and then you see they perfectly complement each other. And I'm very happy with the 450 peak of the radions and the 430 peak of the halides. And I think they, yeah, together they are making a very nice crispy white overall spectrum, which is perfect for acros, I think, and it looks very nice, and growth will be optimized as well because every part of the spectrum is included, and I cannot wait to put some corals in.